All right, welcome everybody back to a Super Monday. The crew's all here. George Carmi, Adam Aniba, and our guest today, Pedro Smith. Pedro, how are you, bud?
Would be better if the Commanders won and got that nice victory Monday heading into Thanksgiving, but it is what it is.
George, I was on the Command This podcast the other day. They had like a little rundown they put down. I was jealous, so we're going to do it here and see what happens. Let's put up the list.
All right, sounds good.
All right, here we go. I tasked each of you earlier in the day to come up with just one word to describe the game and use it in a sentence. We'll defer to our guest for today. Pedro, what is the one word that you would sum up the Commanders from yesterday?
Okay, so the word is own, and the New York Giants own the Washington Commanders. I don't know what it is. I think everyone thought it was Daniel Jones, but it doesn't matter what quarterback it is. Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, Tommy DeVito. It's weird. It's very weird because obviously this team is disappointing, and it's not what I thought it was going to be this year. And I think a lot of people thought it would be kind of like a 8-9 win team, and it's looking more like a 5-6 win team. But still, like this team last week almost beat the Seahawks, who are probably going to make the playoffs. And then you go the next week, and this is at Seattle. Then you go next week back home, and you just get absolutely obliterated by the New York Giants. 6 turnovers to a team that has a third-string quarterback. Their offensive line is still in shambles. Just injuries all over the place. And you lose them like that, it's just absolutely pathetic. And this always happens with the New York Giants. I mean, our only win in the last couple of years was against Jake Fromm. I mean, last year we tied one game, we lost another, and then before that, Daniel Jones was just beating us every week and then losing to everyone else. So, they own us. There's no other way to put it. I will never talk trash to Giants fans again, and I hate Giants fans. Like that, I know most people hate Eagles and Dallas Cowboys fans more, but like Giants fans, especially on Twitter, in person is different, but on Twitter, they get on my nerves, but I can't say anything. I can't say anything at all because, like I said, they own us.
They have 3 wins on the season this year. The Giants do. Two of them against the Commanders. So you're right, Pedro. Owned is perfect. Adam, another egg. What is the word that you came up with for yesterday's game?
Typical Commanders performance, like in the NFC East. Like it's like close to a point, but it's like one thing I said to Wole on Twitter. I was like, if anyone didn't see this coming with DeVito, you haven't been paying attention, because it's like saw this coming a mile away. It didn't matter who was the quarterback, where he was, what if he was to sit in his parents' couch last week. It doesn't matter. They always seem to play down to their competition, and it's like. Of course, you can't blame coaches for all the turnovers, missed tackles, things like that. But man, it does matter, because the players are a reflection of the coaching staff. So we saw it in the post presser how Ron is. Continues to get triggered. Everyone's like, well, what would you say? Well, that's why I'm not a head coach, because when you're in a head coach, you're in a position where you don't have to say anything and you can dictate how you want it to go. But he continues to just be oversensitive, and I think the change can't come soon enough. But again, just a typical performance, and I was not surprised whatsoever. But the 6 turnovers, that was a little shocking.
Chicken Parm DeVito hit us with the forget about it after the touchdown. Maybe the greatest touchdown celebration ever. George, what's your one word and use it in a sentence?
The Commanders are undisciplined, Doug. They basically turn the ball over too much, and they just never really rise to the occasion. And they were just undisciplined on offense. They were undisciplined on defense. And they just basically lack fundamentals. And, they've been undisciplined on defense all year. It's been costing us games. They give up 30 points per game, typically, to their opponents. basically the coaching staff of the Giants outcoached Jack Del Rio pretty handily yesterday, and he just found a couple plays that worked, and basically the Commanders couldn't counter. And I think the root cause on defense was basically hitting off coverage on defense. The Giants would basically leak people coming out of the backfield, basically across the defender's face, and the defenders couldn't communicate and pass the responsibilities over to the opponent, and basically was wide open. So that's definitely undisciplined on defense. We've been seeing that all year. And then on offense, we just pressed. You could tell the team was a little bit anxious. They weren't calm in the moment. They realized that this game was so important to them, so they pressed on. They had 2 turnovers the first 2 possessions of the game, and they also had turnovers just trying to extend for yards and trying to extend for plays and throwing interceptions where they shouldn't have. So it's undisciplined, 6 turnovers. That negates 9 sacks any time of day. So basically, that's why we lost the game. There you go, man.
I tweeted out yesterday, I'll take your 9 sacks and I'll raise you 6 turnovers.
Absolutely.
Right? In Pee Wee ball, we know that after 3 turnovers, the chance of you winning a football game goes down to something ridiculous like 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I say, and I'm curious, we can go quickly before I use my word, but to me, those turnovers aren't on coaching, Adam. Right? Like, I mean, we've had this conversation on these Monday shows for a while now. Players, coaches, where do we land on it? Those turnovers aren't on coaching, are they?
Exactly. It can't be everything on coaching. I think scheme has a lot to do with it. And as good as, we've seen EB adjust to the moment, I still think he's not recognizing, what he's working with, because granted, they were bad interceptions, but, I think most of them were, as far as interceptions go, Sam Howell just had somebody in his face, I can't believe how he keeps getting up. That's what keeps impressing me. How fans turned on him so quickly after that game is just amazing. But, I think that he's going to take his lumps, but, it's really up to the coaching staff to scheme and put him in the best position to succeed. But yeah, against the Giants, man, missed tackles, interceptions, fumbles. Yeah, this is just like not ready to play, and I don't know. I just think the locker room, I don't know. People said, after the trades, maybe that changed a lot of the way, they felt. I think that's happened, and I don't think the losing streak or anything caused that. I just think they don't locker room. I think it's time to tear it down.
Well, I asked Ben Standing on Friday when he was on the show, like at the very end, we had talked about how no changes would be made. We talk about that on the show all the time. And then I said to him, like, what happens if the unforeseeable happens? And he said, I still just don't think that anything happens. But the idea, more than anything, was just the idea that was just never going to happen. And it just always does.
Did you see how Harris brought like 40 of his friends?
That had to have been super embarrassing.
I know that made it seem like, okay, maybe he's like going to be pissed off and maybe do something after the, like if they get humiliated on Thanksgiving, I think there could be a change made, but like on a short week, it's almost impossible to make a change.
That's got to be embarrassing, right? He invited all of his elementary school friends to kind of celebrate the fact that he had the Commanders, and they basically just laid an egg. It was funny. Actually, he tweeted something out. It said, like, imagine the conversations in that club box. Like, what were they talking about there? I mean, it's got to have been so embarrassing at that point.
There were a lot of expletives used, George.
I'm sure. One thing I do want to say, though, I thought it was pretty interesting. So I love Logan Paulson, and I was kind of listening to him earlier today. There was some element of coaching. I don't know if we want to get down this route right now in the conversation. I know you still have your one word too, Doug. But basically, I guess, like, from what I gathered, Wink Martindale basically talks about, or his big scheme is basically his man coverage and throwing exotic blitzes over and over again, kind of generating pressure. I think what happened was Eric Bieniemy kind of planned for that and tried to counter with short, quick passes because a pass rush was going to come after him. But what ended up happening was Wink Martindale was basically smart, and he basically just kind of stayed more of a soft zone, and it basically kind of had Sam Howell kind of hesitate for a moment, hence the extra pressure, and kind of made him hold on to the ball. So throughout the game, Sam Howell was pretty conservative, had a lot of checkdowns. There wasn't really a lot of shots downfield, so it kind of limited us. So I think, like, Eric Bieniemy kind of had a game plan, kind of thought he was outsmarting Martindale, but then kind of like didn't have a counter in the middle of the game and kind of got stuck where we're at.
Well, before we get to my word, and I mean, we'll have to get to the word at all, but I thought it was interesting that you get wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins from the Giants, who says after the game, they weren't really disguising anything. They were in that man and never came out of it. And we were happy with that. And then you get guys from the Commanders, St. Juice and Emmanuel Forbes, I believe, who basically say the scheme's too complicated and we're not passing off right. So it's odd that we think it's too complicated, but the opposing offense thought it was so simplistic that they had it figured out by halftime. And that's frustrating. And that leads me to my word, which is pilfered. The Commanders have pilfered another year of my fandom. Because that's it. This one's done.
Yeah.
And I hate that. And just like so many of them in the past, it gets done early. And that's it. That's the word. George, let's go. Hit up the chalkboard. What are we doing next? I don't even want to do the pilfered.
Ron's post-game press.
I like this. We're gonna start listening to the post-game pressers, which I think is a cool idea. And if you got the video pulled, let's listen to Ron first.
All right, we're going to the whole thing, Doug?
Yep.
All right, give me 1 second.
If anybody wants to comment on it, just speak up. And George, I think you can pause it, right?
Yep, I got it. Give me 1 second.
What do you think of Sam's play?
Well, I thought he had his moments. You know, he took a shot early on, and not sure if that was a good decision, but he had some really good moments. Moved the ball really well, and just can't turn it over. And
Hit pause, George.
All right.
Real quick. First of all, everybody that I've heard so far, both the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, like that was the design of the play. That's the right read. He goes long. Maybe it wasn't a great throw, but the play was there. That's where he was supposed to go with the ball.
Yeah, the wide receiver was one-on-one, and it was a worthy shot down the field. Maybe it wasn't the best, or maybe Diami Brown could have knocked the ball down, but it was a worthy shot in my opinion. Cool.
Obviously, there are NFL players on that side, but all factors involved. It seems like a new low point on the season. Do you kind of feel it that way right now?
Well, it is a low point, that's for sure. Anytime you got an opportunity to win a football game and you put the numbers up you did, you got a chance. You got to come through.
Why do you think the defense seemed to struggle with? Obviously, they got a lot of sacks on DeVito, but he was able to seemingly do what he wanted in the passing game for the most part.
Well, there were a couple of big plays that we gave up. And we just can't do that.
Was this after his growth? Was this a step back for Sam?
No, it's always a step forward. He's learning. He's growing. He made some mistakes, but he hung in there. He fought, gave us a chance to win the football game.
Why did you guys have trouble hanging on to the ball? What was behind all the turnovers?
Well, the unfortunate part, if you look at the fumbles, the most of the part was when the guys were going to the ground. We've got to make sure we hold on to those footballs. And then, some of the throws that Sam had were tipped or under duress.
You feel like the guys came ready to play early in this thing?
Always. They showed up early to play. They were ready.
He was quick on that one.
Week of practice.
He's hurt, man. You can tell he's upset in this whole video.
First two possessions.
Do you think the Giants came into it with a different mindset, being a little more desperate?
Couldn't tell you what their mindset was.
Here it goes.
The explosive plays for a second week in a row. Anything in particular there?
No, we unfortunately, gave them up.
Why did he throw off the table there?
You can see he's getting more
Anything
angry and angry.
systemically that needs to change on defense
Ridiculous.
in light of those?
Well, just some things that we got to make sure, we're putting them in the position to be successful. And we can't give up plays.
You talked a lot about growth overall. Does a game like this make you question how much things are growing?
That's Grant Paulson.
Necessarily.
But when you have games at home with teams like the Bears or the Giants now twice, teams that at this point,
No matter what my answer is,
yeah,
it's going to come out and people are going to say it's an excuse. So we're just going to take the responsibility. We're going to show up tomorrow. We're going to get prepared and get ready to play Dallas because we got a very short week. Okay.
totally understand that. I guess my question is, at this point of your program, did you expect you'd be winning games like this at home against teams you're 9 points favored against?
Mm-hmm.
Grit brought out the
Sometimes you win
flamethrower.
them.
He really
sometimes
did.
Professionals too. That started the questions. Was they're professionals too. They're going to show up. They're going to play hard.
Ron, to get back to the explosive plays on defense, I mean, some of those were not missed tackles. Some of those were guys wide open again. And I just wonder, at some point, does somebody have to sit
David
down, have to
Aldridge.
be
Yeah, it's David
replaced
Aldridge.
if they keep giving up these types of plays.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are things that we have to look at. We have to, just continue to discuss it and go from there.
And you've been good at these runs in October, November, and it doesn't look like it's happening this year. What do you think is not happening that has happened the previous years?
Well, again, we can't turn the ball over and we can't allow those type of explosive plays.
Ron, when you say you're looking at to replace somebody, you talking players or you talking staff?
And that's John Keim.
No, I'm just saying we're going to take a look at things and we'll go from there.
And then at this point in the year, and kind of piggybacking what Grant was talking about, what growth aren't you seeing in this team that's kind of
Consistency. I mean, we move the ball, we turn it over. For 2.5 quarters, we shut their run game down and we allow an explosive. That's not consistent. That's inconsistent play. And that's where you get beat. You have to be able to sustain what you've done to sustain success. Good play, good play, good play. Then we can't have a major negative play. We can't. And if we do, we're not experienced enough to withstand it.
Take 3 more.
Ron, you've been part of the NFL for so many years, players and as a coach. And as a head coach, you are judged on wins and losses.
Okay, you're telling me something I know. Go ahead.
Right now, this team's 4-7. You're number 4.
This is Scott Abraham.
Are you surprised, or how do you defend where this team is at right now?
Again, if I answer a question like that, I'm making an excuse. Okay, it'll get out there. I don't need to deal with it. We're just going to continue to do the best we can. We're going to work our asses off. We're going to show up tomorrow. We'll show up Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll show up Thursday, and we're going to play hard. We'll see what happens.
With your experience in the NFL as a player and a coach, where this team and franchise is at right now, do you think there needs to be some sort of a change, whether that's personnel or in the coaching staff?
I'm not going to discuss those kinds of things right now. What we're going to do is we're going to evaluate everything we do, and we'll continue to do that.
Ron, you talked about the inconsistency. How hard does that inconsistency and execution make it for you guys to come up with some kind of plan that you trust week in and week out?
Well, there are some things that go on, that you think about when you are putting together game plans, and the inconsistencies are some of the tough things. It's one of the things we just got to continue to work our ways through it. It's one of those things when it clicks and comes together, then it looks really good, and when it doesn't, that's the result.
That's what it looks like.
Cool. Thank you.
And I'll tell you what, this is what it looks like when your team doesn't have an identity, because you can at least lean on your team's identity, strong run, defense, whatever, but they have none. They have no identity. And exactly that comes back to the coaches to create that. And he just continues to get triggered with valid questions. You got to be prepared. You can't just say you're going to keep working. There's got to be some answers, got to be some changes, but we'll see.
Let me throw a question out for the group. So I think Harris and the whole, Harris ownership group wants to let Ron Rivera go out with class and kind of not fire him for all the things that he's done over the past couple of years. Are they being counterintuitive right now? Because he's getting drilled week after week, and this is looking ugly. Should we just relieve him and let him walk away this $7 million and kind of walk away? Or what do you guys think? What's worse, to kind of finish off the season for 6 more games, or just let him go right now? What would be a worse? How would you handle that?
Pedro, what is the best plan going forward?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right solution. Either way, if you get fired mid-season, I think any coach that gets fired mid-season is probably going to feel a little bit embarrassed.
True.
He's just going to be in the headlines. He's going to feel embarrassed. It's what everyone's going to, the thing is, if you do it mid-season, everyone's going to be talking about you being fired when it's the last week. Last week of the season, right after the season's over, there's going to be 4 or 5 coaches fired. So it's not going to be as, talked about. Also, playoffs
True.
are starting. But honestly, I don't care about the class and everything. Respectfully, Rivera's a good guy and everything. And, he went through a lot. But I do think, you got to do what's best for the team. So if that is firing Rivera with, right now, which would be a little bit worse for him, but seeing what you have in EB or something else, then okay, go ahead and do that. But if you want to keep him and you think that's better than having EB out there as a coach, then that's fine. But I think if Rivera gets fired, I think Eric Bieniemy would be the head coach because he is the assistant. I know some people think it would be putting him in a bad situation and setting them up to fail. But I mean, I'm interested to see you guys' thoughts on that.
We've talked about it before on the pod. I think it's, I would prefer to just see Eric Bieniemy continue to focus on being a play caller and giving Sam Howell all the attention he needs. Adam, I know your thought, you said it here before, and I actually tell people all the time about your thoughts just to see what they think about. Without putting words in your mouth, Adam has said before, like he thinks it's important for EB to become the interim head coach, if nothing more than to get, just like players, to get the head coaching on tape, right? You want to see what he can do on tape as the man.
I don't think that personally, I don't think the offense would really be sacrificed much at all if he's promoted to head coach, because I think he thrives in a situation where he's given more responsibility. And yeah, I do think it's really good for his chances. I've read a couple people say, it would be counterintuitive for him and it wouldn't make sense. I don't believe that. I think that right now, the way the rest of the team's playing, if he can separate himself that by becoming a head coach and, showing not just things on offense, just showing structure, maybe you see guys doing different things, playing harder. Like that's the kind of things you want to see. I don't think it would hurt him. A lot of people said, how many times have you seen get the head coaching job the next year? Granted, it doesn't happen a lot, but I think this is the situation. You got to do something, because the morale has got to be in the toilet, with Ron Rivera and JDR. I think you just make those moves. You relieve the GMs, the Martys of their positions. That they're already talking to people. They're already talking to people around the league. I'm sure a GM is somebody that's already with a team right now, so they're going to have to wait on that. So I think that you can start doing those things and, see what you have, because I don't see the benefit whatsoever to keeping him. They didn't hire him. So to let him, go out with class, this is a business. It doesn't only happen when there's arguments. It happens sometimes with just, wins and losses. So, I think it would be best case scenario. Me and Wole talk about it all the time. It's, giving him 6+ games to have on a resume. I just think that, that will help the next GM, because no matter who it is, as much as I want him as the head coach, and I like to see that, I want the next GM brought in, and I want him to go over candidates. So I just want him to have somebody that he can look at as not just an all coordinator, somebody that has the ability to, run the team as well.
I really think you mentioned the respect that Ron Rivera holds across the league. I also feel like that's one of the reasons why, whether you or anybody else likes it, to me, that's the greatest reason why he doesn't get fired, because
probably
it's a team going nowhere. In all honesty, if you fire the man and they get on a 2-game heater, right? Like you fired Ron Rivera and made him take the walk of shame for maybe a couple of wins down the road, that also feels short-sighted. So I think it will be fascinating, because history shows there are plenty of organizations that fire somebody right mid-season when it's not going right, and it doesn't matter. I just don't think with the circumstances here, that's probably how it will happen. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. George, we also have the clip from the quarterback, right? Post-game.
Yep. Let's pull it up real quick.
Let's hear what he has to say.
It starts with me. I got to do a better job taking care of the football. I didn't give my team a chance to win today, but we all just got to be better. I thought we moved the ball well throughout the game, but just too many turnovers. And no matter who you're playing in the NFL, if you turn the ball over that many times, you're not going to win. And so we just got to be better. Got a short week, so I'm going to go on tomorrow and do everything we can and try to win a game on Thursday.
The last interception, what were you seeing down the field?
Yeah, I kind of felt the pocket kind of collapsing on me, so I was just trying to get the ball out of bounds. Just didn't get it far enough.
How are you feeling physically, and kind of what happened on that hit when you were down for a little bit?
Yeah, I just kind of fell really hard, but I'm all right. No major injuries or anything, so I'm all right.
Did it affect you at all later in the game?
No, ma'am. No.
It's interesting to hear him say he didn't get that last one thrown out of
Sam, I know
bounds.
if you could fix it, you would. But how frustrating is it that this season has been 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it just hasn't been. You haven't been able to build on anything that you've done well this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most frustrating part is, I think we have a really good football team and we have so much potential in that locker room. And that's the disappointing thing, is that we're not getting the results that we feel like we're definitely capable of. So there's a lot of football left. We still got 6 games left to play, and we're going to give it everything we got for these last 6 games. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not what we thought we'd be. And we know we're a better team than what we've shown this year. But we're running out of time. There's only 6 games left, so we got to do everything we can to try to go on a run here.
What was different schematically from the Giants today compared to what they did the first time, and how do you guys feel like you adjusted to that or were able to adjust to that as you figured it out?
Yeah, I think the first time we went up there, they kind of aligned in some different fronts on 3rd down and brought a little more pressure than they did today. But I think that it wasn't really anything they did schematically. It was just the turnovers. That's all it was, and we just got to do a better job taking care of the football. Like I said, if you turn the ball over that many times, you're not going to win.
Sam, last time you guys had to go into a Thursday game, you were coming off of a disappointing division loss. What can you learn from that experience moving into Dallas on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I mean, we just got to put it behind us. We got to put this game behind us, and we got a really good opponent coming up on Thursday with the Cowboys. So we just got to take it one day at a time, do everything we can to prepare ourselves for the game on Thursday, and go out there and give it our best shot. But I think the main thing is we got to put this one behind us and get focused on the next one.
And then with every loss, more and more people start calling for coaching jobs and things like that. Do you, as a quarterback and a leader, do you feel the weight of that?
We don't really pay attention to stuff like that. I have faith in all my players, all my coaches around me. I know that we have everything in this organization that we need to be successful. Players, coaches, everybody. It's just a matter of we got to go out there and do it each and every day and get the results. And we haven't done that this year, and I think we're definitely capable of it. But we just got to fix it, and it starts with me, and I got to do a better job of giving this team chances to win football games. But we have everything we need in that locker room to be successful.
Sam, haven't beaten the Giants in 2 years, the Commanders 2 games this season.
He says everything you want to hear from the
prepare
quarterback.
in a way that just continues to give Washington so much problems.
I can't speak too much as far as last year's games.
He was like, I didn't play in those games, so I'll be asking you about
this
those
year.
losses.
We really weren't playing the Giants. We were playing ourselves, and we kind of beat ourselves in both of those games. And they took advantage of the mistakes we made. But yeah, I think we just didn't play. We didn't play good enough football to win either of those 2 games, and they took advantage of it. And like I said, they're obviously they don't have a great record either, but they're still an NFL football team. They still have really good players over there, and when you make mistakes, they'll take advantage of them.
You're right, Doug. He really is refined as a quarterback, right? He answers all the questions the right way.
What play?
The first interception.
The first interception. I thought it was the right read, right place to go with the ball. Just kind of threw it too far down the field. Obviously, I haven't really watched how the play kind of turned out. I didn't really see him catch the ball, but I knew it was kind of coverage we wanted for the play to take a shot down the field. I just got to do a better job of making sure that Diami has a chance to catch the ball, and not the defender.
And then generally speaking, you guys haven't had a ton of big explosive over the top plays this year. How hard is that to stay patient and to hit them when they come and they aren't a regular part of your offense?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, that's something we've done a pretty good job of the past few weeks is just staying patient and taking what the defense has given us. But the big plays will come. And we've had some big plays throughout the year, but I think we're seeing a lot of shell coverage, a lot of deep safeties. So it's definitely makes it harder. But we just got to continue to try to do everything we can to take what they give us, just execute our offense.
Take 2 more. All good?
Cool. Appreciate it, guys.
George, it was another game where McLaurin got 5 catches. I don't have the target numbers in front of me. I don't remember him dropping any, so it might have just been 5 targets for 5 catches. We kind of talked about it. Was it 7 targets?
I think so. I'm not 100%, but I think it was 7.
Either way, George, another game where he doesn't, 10 targets for number 1 receiver is what you're looking at minimum, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like we talked about it before on this show. Like I love Terry McLaurin, but I want him to dominate. I want him to start getting, we talked about AJ Brown. I always refer to him. I know it's kind of a polarizing topic in our fan base with the Eagles and all that. He gets about 14 targets per game. And I want something along the lines of that. Like I said it in our group chat, 2-minute drill, we got the ball. I like our chances. Sam Howell has done pretty well with up-tempo moving down the field. This is Terry time. You got to start feeding him and kind of get down the field, but we're just not forcing the ball towards him. And I just don't know what's going on in regard to that. You could tell Terry McLaurin is visibly frustrated. I'm sure you guys saw the post-game interview. He's he's like upset and flabbergasted by it. He doesn't know what to do. And I just don't know if it's Sam's not looking for him or if it's not working out in the system. I think for this particular game, Sam felt the pressure. I think he kind of was just checking the ball pretty quickly and using it underneath. But like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on with that. Like, I want Terry to be more like, I know Terry hasn't had a 100-yard game, I believe, this entire season. He only has 2 touchdowns on the year, and I just don't know what's going on with that. And it's a little bit disappointing. I know right now we're talking about, is he elite? Is he a true wide receiver 1? I do think he is. I do think he's a wide receiver 1. I don't know if he's a dominant wide receiver 1 like Tyreek Hill and things of that nature, but we just basically got to incorporate him somehow. And it seems like EB is trying to feature him. 7 targets is a pretty fair amount, but he just hasn't really done anything with it. I think he had 40 yards on this game. He's averaging about 60 yards on the season. So we just got to see more from Terry. Like, he has a large contract. He should be the guy, but it's not showing right now. I don't really know what's going on. I guess Pedro, I'll throw it to you. Like, I talked to Adam and Doug about it. How do you feel about it? What's going on?
It pisses me off so much because like these. And what makes me more mad is like the fans. I mean, even like some content creators will turn on him, say crazy things about Terry. And it's like, I remember these guys saying the same thing and these fans saying the same thing last year. Because last year, the first 5-6 weeks of the season, Wentz was not throwing to Terry at all. And Terry was not having big games. And people were like, oh, it's Terry. He can't separate, whatever. He's not a good receiver. And then Heineke goes in there. And he's just like, F it, we'll throw it to Terry. And it works. And that's the thing that upsets me. They're throwing on that first drive of the game. They put Diami on a go route, which is basically all he can do. And they're throwing it up to him. And Diami, like, let's just keep it real. He has not shown that he can come down with not even a wide open catch, but forget a contested catch. Like,
yeah.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, it was either the Seahawks. What game was it where he dropped the one in the end zone? I think that was the Patriots game, right?
Yeah, he got an awesome catch against the Seahawks. Actually, we laughed about that last week that we were surprised he caught it. But go ahead, yeah
exactly. And then, like, you've seen time and time again, like Terry, he is a good route runner, but he's not like that elite separator where he's gonna, be. There's 8 yards separation between him and the receiver. But like, you remember the Colts game last year, he just mossed Stephon Gilmore. He's not open. He's going to make the catch. The Falcons game, 2 years ago, like so many games, just throw it to Terry. And honestly, if it's anywhere near him, I think the worst case scenario is Terry will bat it down. Like, Terry's not going to let the receiver or the corner come down with it. Diami, on the other hand, he's going to let the other guy get that catch. So it really gets me upset that Terry is not getting targeted on those deep balls. And honestly, Sam, I love Sam, but his deep ball has been a little bit off this year. Like, everything seems to be a little bit overthrown, and you like it to be underthrown, if anything, because then, you get that PI. But also, you look at Terry's stats, I think he has the lowest yards per catch by far in his career. I don't know exactly what it is, and compared to other years,
he hasn't had over 90 yards in a game since last December.
Yeah, since last December, but his yards per catch too, it's much lower than usual. So they're targeting him way shorter and not getting him involved deep. And I'm still, we'll see about Eric Bieniemy. I know a lot of people, these fans are so emotional where 1 week they're crowning Eric Bieniemy like he's going to be the next head coach. And then the next week they're like, this guy shouldn't be a coordinator. I've never, since the season started, I've never fully been sold on him or really. I mean, there was 1 game or 2 games where I was like, okay, I'm done with this guy. But these receivers, Terry produced with Scott Turner and with terrible QBs. And even Jahan, he produced more last year than he did this year. So I don't think the receivers, magically forgot how to get open or make these catches. I think it is a little bit on the coordinator, and Eric Bieniemy does a lot of good things and he does some bad things and he's still learning. But I just don't like the talk about Terry is not a wide receiver 1. He's not a good receiver, because he's shown he can dominate with very bad QBs and honestly bad coordinators and bad other receivers, and he still dominates. This year, obviously, that's not happening, and I think that has a little to do with the coordinators. And sometimes he is getting targets, sometimes he's not, and guys like Pringle, Crowder, and Diami are getting targets. So I hope he gets targeted more, but also gets targeted a little bit deeper down the field as well.
Actually was fairly fine with EB's game plan yesterday, but I will say giving Gore the ball at the 5-yard line made me very, very, very upset. And I drank more than I had expected to when he did that. Adam, my Twitter question poll for this week was, who's more likely to be back next year? Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, or Antonio Gibson?
I honestly think Logan Thomas. I think, he's really shown enough, the past couple of weeks that, he's more of a safety blanket.
He had a nice game Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and Gibson, I think, he's shown flashes, but I think with what they want to do, and again, going to be new coaching staff. So we'll see what happens as far as Rodriguez. I was going to say they really like Rodriguez, but I think that going into the draft, I think day 3 is you're talking about Antonio Gibson. We saw this year with Tennessee, got Spears. He was a guy I really liked that at Tulane. There's going to be a lot of those guys in this class. So I think that tight ends, not necessarily the easiest, especially cerebral tight ends. What I would love is, Logan Thomas as a tight end too. I think that's a great situation. If we have him as a tight end too, and we can get, you and me, we've talked about Brock Bowers ad nauseum, but, this kid from TCU really, is shining. There's a couple of tight ends in this class that are going to really be able to open it up.
From Texas, I like real well.
Yeah, and one thing that, I took away from that game after watching, the focus on the Logan Thomas is I really think that if EB does stay, I think, a big receiver is something that really complements Terry, because I like Jahan Dotson, I like what they have there, but these guys aren't complementing each other. I've been watching Florida State a lot over the last couple of weeks, starting my evaluation, and, Johnny Wilson, 6'7", and Keon Coleman, 6'4", they constantly bail out their quarterbacks, and that's the kind of big bodies that, can really.
But that's what they were, not to cut you off, Adam, but isn't that what they were hoping out of Cole Turner?
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a mystery to me. I've talked to people that I know that really, scouted a lot of Nevada ball, and they seem to think he's just not really progressed as a route runner. And I think, his limited ability as a blocker, decent blocker, willing, but his inability to really evolve in his route tree is hurting him. That's what I hear, because Logan Thomas is excellent. He's excellent at, the whole route tree. And I think, when you try to put any of those guys against him, it just shows how bad they are. So I don't think they have a lot of trust with them. But I don't know. It baffles me because I really thought we'd see more Turner. But that's telling me no matter what's here, tight end is it's definitely, no matter what, a huge focus. Even with Thomas back next year, if he's back next year.
Pedro, what do you think about those 3?
Those Thomas, Gibson, and Fuller,
and Samuel.
Oh, and Samuel. I don't think Curtis is going to be back. I feel like it just, I don't know. He's a good player for sure, but they've got Jahan, they've got Terry, and I just think, I don't know. I think Curtis probably will want to go elsewhere too. I think, Logan, out of those 3, I probably think Logan's the most likely to come back. He's a good veteran to have in that locker room, good leader, and, teammates seem to love him. So I think bringing back Logan as the tight end 2 would be good for Sam Howell. And Gibson, he's been solid, honestly, but I think he's probably going to want to move on, maybe find a spot that will let him be, get a little bit more involved. Even the last few weeks, he has been a little bit more involved.
They missed a little bit of his pass blocking, Antonio Gibbs. I mean, Chris Rodriguez, I think, did a nice job in his spot work, but quietly, Gibson has become one of the better pass blocking running backs on third down. And when they finally use him in the pass catching game, I think you see it a little bit more. Samuel, to me, will be interesting. That was you could tell they missed him a little bit yesterday when he went out. I think he was really part of what the game plan was supposed to be, and I think they're finally using him right. That'll be interesting to see just what Samuel wants. Like if EB's back in this offense and they're going to do a lot with Samuel and these kind of motions and jets and things like that, it may be in his best interest to be back. George, what do you think? You got a preference of these 3?
I think you guys nailed it. I think of the 3, it's the best marriage to people that want to stay and also with the team wanting to stay as well. I think Logan Thomas wants to be here. I think he's from the area as well. Didn't he go to Virginia Tech? I'm pretty sure he went to Virginia Tech, right?
Yeah, he did.
So he wants to stay in the area. His family's here. I think he has a son that's in high school around the area as well, and he's a feature part of the offense. And I think he'd prefer to stay. I think the team would like to have him as a depth role, and as a tight end, you can have depth. Gibson, if you asked me a couple months ago, I'd have been like, there's absolutely no way he'd come back. I think I've heard some whispers recently that the team is kind of interested in having him back, which I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because I don't think he'd be that expensive. Like a franchise running back is about $10 million, $11 million. What, Gibson about $3 million to keep him around? I don't think it'd be that expensive for him to stay here, but I think Pedro hit the nail on the head. I think Gibson is kind of like, you know what, I got drafted here. It's cool. I didn't really maximize my skills here. Maybe I'll just try something different. And, if the Chargers or, some other team is basically interested.
Or the Chiefs.
The Chiefs. Just some of the teams will be interested in just trying him out. I think he'd be willing to explore that. So I can see Gibson from his end not necessarily wanting to stay. And then Samuel, who knows? I think Samuel might be interested in staying, but at the same time, I like what Adam's saying. I think, we talk about it all the time. I think maybe I'm being forward thinking, but I think wide receivers are starting to become inundated and a lot of great talents coming out of college. I think you can find a good wide receiver for pretty cheap. You can draft one, have him in contract for 4 or 5 years. And why pay a aging wide receiver when you get a young one that's fresh and maybe a different dynamic than Samuel? Because I agree. I think having 3 6'1", they're listed at 6'1" wide receivers when they're all like 5'11", 5'10", it's probably good to have some diversity and switch it up a little bit. So I agree. I think Thomas is one staying.
Adam, do you have the stats from the game yesterday pulled up?
I do.
Can you pull them up real quick? Pedro, while they're doing that, how many blue chip players are on this team right now?
Oh, I saw you put this question out. I don't know, man. I would like to say Terry is I still believe in Terry. So I'm going to stick with him just because I still think he's a very good player and great, leader and everything and great role model. I'll say him. And then besides that, no one else on offense. Hopefully Sam Howell is, but you don't know yet. And, definitely not anyone on the offensive line. Cosme's been good, but, far from a blue chip player. Robinson's good, but again, he's not an elite back. I think blue chip's top 5 in the league. So he's not top 5.
Perennial Pro Bowlers with all pro potential.
Yeah. And then on defense, I'll stick with John Allen there because I think he's been disappointing in my opinion this year, but he's been dealing with that. I always mispronounce it.
Lisfranc, right? Lisfranc injury in his foot.
Yeah, the plantar injury. So who knows, how close to 100% he is. Deron Payne, I think he's been disappointing. You go from 11 plus sacks to 2 sacks, 2.5 sacks, and honestly, just not as dominant as you would like him to be, even in the run game, and not getting a lot of pressure. So I would say maybe John Allen and Terry, and that's really it. It's disappointing because before this season, I would think, I'd have thought a lot more. And, I'd never really liked the Chase Young trade. And, he's looking good so far. And I know it was a difficult situation. That's a whole different talk that we could have for 30 minutes. But I feel like the Commanders are going to regret that one day.
I'm with you, Pedro.
I just wanted to mention to Dave Robb, if you come on Mondays, most certainly you'll catch a John Bates conversation because
that's
I am
boy.
the leader in the clubhouse. That's right.
Yeah.
It's better every week. I'm telling you, just needs more action. What was the final line for Sam Howell?
I can pull it up really quickly. So looking over here, final line for Sam Howell, 31 for 45 for 255 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. 4 sacks for minus 26 yards with a QBR of 59.
And again, another day where the running backs kind of got it going. Brian Robinson's at 4.3 yards a carry, which is about what you want average. Chris Rodriguez, I think, was over that at 7.5.
Yeah.
He was looking pretty good. He actually was.
And again, they just, for whatever reason, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about it because we know it's not worth it because that's just where we're at now. But man, when you're chunking the ball like they do, they were getting, and this is a couple games in a row to me, and I've got to go back and rewatch it again, but where they were picking up big chunks in the second half, and I really thought, all right, we're getting ready to just steamroll our way to a victory, and then something happens and it doesn't go that way, and it's frustrating that way. Because the running
real quick, QBR is.
1 second.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my thing's delayed. But I was just gonna say QBR is such an interesting stat because I just looked at it and I was surprised when I heard the 59 QBR for Howell this week. And last week he had a 51 QBR when he had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. I never really liked that stat, but it's just interesting that he gets a 59 after that performance versus last week.
No, I agree with you. I think we were talking in the group chat. I think Justin Fields had like a 75.9 QBR, and he had like 160 yards passing and 1 touchdown, and like a couple interceptions. It was like I don't like the ESPN metric either. I don't like it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start wrapping these Mondays up with something new. This is the first time we've done this. So I told you all the last segment of the day will be our goats and donkeys. So one guy that really shined for you and one guy that, not so much. PJ, you're our guest today. We'll start with you.
All right, so I'm gonna go with. I'm not gonna do the obvious one for who shined. Everyone else is gonna say him, so I'll say Brian Robinson. I feel like he's been honestly, I think Terry's the best player on offense, but Brian Robinson's been playing the best football over the last few weeks. Has been really shining as a pass catcher. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he had a big game yesterday in terms of pass catching. At least got a couple, catches for some yards. Let me look at.
He had 7 catches for 58 yards.
Yeah, like 7 catches, 58 yards. Like that's really impressive, and was solid as a runner as well. Would like to see him get a little bit more involved, but I'd say he shined. And then defense. I'm gonna go. Who didn't shine? There's a lot of different guys. I'll go De'Ami Brown. You can't just the first one. I'm not going to put that on him, but I think some people are talking about he didn't run the route properly, and then also didn't really do much to bat down the ball. But the biggest thing was the drop, man. You can't drop that pass. It wasn't like a perfect ball, but that's a ball as a receiver. You're catching 10 out of 10 times, and you can't do that. Too many drops with De'Ami. I was hoping he would take a little bit step up this year, and at times he has, but there's just too many inconsistencies with him to truly trust him to be a starting receiver in this league. So I would say Robinson shined and De'Ami did not.
Adam, what about you?
Well, I was going to say Robinson, but pick 2. I'm going to say Logan Thomas. 5 catches, 58 yards. He made some big time catches. 11.6 per reception. I think he's shown that he's a good safety blanket, intelligent. Brings a lot to the field. But I'm going to give it a 2-man for the disappointment, which is John Allen and Daron Payne. This was an opportunity for them to really dominate the Giants' offensive line. That it's in and out, players in and out, back in with injury. And this was really a time for them to create some pressure, and they were just non-existent. So,
George, what about you?
I don't know if I should be funny or serious, right? So I'll be funny for the heck of it. Why not, right? So funny, I'll give first half David Mayo was a goat. He was awesome, right? Like 2 sacks, he was tackling, he was making all these impact plays. I was like, David Mayo breakout game, which I thought was pretty funny.
That was like the spicy Mayo you get from Arby's.
Exactly. And then second half, David Mayo is the donkey because he basically started to play pretty poorly. He got exploited on the Bellinger tight end. I think he let a tight end leak out in the backfield, got a touchdown right over his shoulder. And he didn't really play. He didn't maintain the momentum that he had in the first half. So I'll be funny. I got a good one up my sleeve if you don't say him, Doug. So go ahead. I'll throw it over to you.
Well, I was also on the Brian Robinson train.
Me too.
He's just been fantastic. And my donkey was Jamin Davis. And maybe it's not his fault because they're asking him to do that. But if you expect Jamin Davis to cover Saquon Barkley one-on-one on wheel routes, then expect Saquon Barkley to get lots of touchdowns.
Exactly.
If you expect Jamin Davis to cover, DeAndre Swift on wheel routes, expect that he's going to get torched on those. So maybe it's also coaching that goes in there. But De'Ami Brown, man, God bless you. But those guys give him the business. George, what was the one that you had? Yeah.
So the serious one was KJ Henry, man. He had a pretty good game as a breakout.
Yes, I was going to ask Adam about the breakdown. I'm glad you brought that up. Adam, you got 2 minutes to tell us about KJ Henry because he had a fantastic game.
Yeah, in college, it was always just, getting the pressure.
Good point, George.
Similar to, what we saw with Montez Sweat for a while, just not getting those sacks. But, he's just active. He always gets the pressure. So I think, I wrote an article about, his other fellow rookie from Louisiana, 7th round, but Henry's the one who actually flashed yesterday. So I think that regardless of what system changes from, to next year, I think, he's shown over the last 2 weeks, he's a guy that I think is starting to get it. He's starting to, you're seeing he's starting to play fast. He's not thinking as much as he was. I'm seeing, a lot of the deficiencies that he had in Clemson. He's getting past those as far as, his initial pass rush, his jump off the snap. So I'm seeing improvement there. But yeah, he's not the biggest defensive end. He's limited as far as, overall pass rushing moves and counters. But man, I really like what I saw from him yesterday, though.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but KJ Henry led the nation in pressure rate last year.
Right.
Pressures.
That's what I said.
People hate the pressures. I know they're not sacks. But I mean, I'm assuming that's why he fell a little bit, because he didn't get home and probably doesn't have. I mean, he certainly does not have Chase Young burst, right? But
no, he
reminds me a little bit more of Kerrigan. His motor just doesn't stop.
Yeah. Any scout, anybody I've spoken to just said, he's an ideal. They said we got a steal that, he's an ideal situational guy to have in there. But, in no way is there any projection of him being a full-time starter? I don't see it either. But I like him, coming out of the rotation. No, but again, if you talk about, some of the guys that we've had on the show, and prior to after the draft, they talked about, having Sweat, Montez, Chase Young, overload inside, doing, creative things with guys like Henry and the other guys, that could really pay off. But again, just such an unimaginative scheme that, we're not seeing anything of what these guys can possibly do.
Dave Robb said his donkey is the veteran Leno Jr. I love me some Leno, and he's actually been better than I think a lot of fans think. But listen, if you're going to put him one-on-one with Kayvon Thibodeau, good luck. That's a long day at the office. And Kayvon Thibodeau one-on-one against tackles is going to be a long day at the office. He's really bendy and fast.
Did you guys hear the quote that Kayvon Thibodeau said to Charles Leno?
Yeah.
It's like, thank you for the double-digit sacks. That's awful, man. You owned him.
Yeah.
And the false start was bad too, because I think if that false start didn't happen, they had a shot. They're at midfield with 43 seconds left, and then I thought they should have called it. I was like, call the timeout, 43. But then they wait, and then I think they call Hal snaps it at 29-30, and then Leno does the false start. You lose the timeout.
They have to call timeout because it's a 10-second rule. They have to call at that point.
Exactly. You're just screwed. And that really killed them, because say you're at the 50 with 43 seconds left and no timeouts, but you at least have a chance, because then on the next play, obviously it wasn't a great play, but he didn't that's why I don't really care about that interception at the end of the game, because if he got sacked there, the game's over. So
game over.
He should have thrown it out of bounds, and that's what he was trying to do.
He's trying to do it.
It was good to hear it in that press conference.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the end of the world. That interception, he kind of just, had to do it.
In the end, we can talk about all the things when you turn the ball over 6 times and you get there were 0 on the other end of the turnovers, right? Did they get a turnover on their own? No.
Nope.
9 sacks. You'll take 6 turnovers over 9 sacks any day. Any day. Well, listen, it's not the game was sort of interesting, and I know you guys will keep watching, and we'll keep doing these on Mondays. And we're extremely close to the point where it's yes, we'll watch them to win, but if they lose, thanks. I think we're number 7 in the draft order right now. You get up there, we're getting dangerously close to one of those premier tackles.
And Chicago keeps losing too, so that second round just keeps getting better and better.
That's right.
That's going to be huge for them.
Really well.
All right, thank you, fellas. We'll the Super Monday crew will see you back, of course, next week. And Pedro, I'm always excited and glad when you come on the show. What do you got coming up the rest of the week on the pod?
I made a video today talking about, I think Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show. He talked about how Rivera's seat is getting a little warm. I mean, it should have been warm, but we'll see when he's gone. We talked about that. And then probably this week, we're talking about the bigger picture, maybe some head coaching and general manager candidates. I think that is going to, this offseason's huge, man. We're probably going to get a new general manager, hoping it's a young guy, youngish. maybe Adam Peters, something like that, and then probably a new head coach and whole new front office and everything. So like, I know people are like disappointed at everything and discouraged, but like and they're like, oh, same old Commanders with, Dan Snyder. It's not the case. Wait till next year. Next year is the first year where we really get a new, we get fresh air. So I think I'll just say that, be patient. Let's see who they hire. And then if it's still happening in a couple years, that's when you can start to say, okay, but yeah.
I am 100% with you. I think people thought when the new owner came in, it somehow was going to affect the talent level and the coaching on the field. And that's unfortunately just not how it works. All right, fellas. Appreciate you. Good stuff today.
All right, gentlemen. Peace out.